Okay, welcome back to Games with Grandma, although we're not going to play games today. Grandma hasn't eaten yet, and I just got off vacation, so I need to get home to the kids. But this is episode 2 of Games with Grandma, and we're going to ask some questions again. We're going to go a little off track. We started talking about her childhood last time, right? And where you grew up, but we got some questions that came in from one of our viewers. I don't know if you knew this, but this was picked up by NBC. It'll be on every Thursday.
Yeah.
Prime time, 7 p.m. So one of the things, one of the questions came in from Camden Doolittle, and I think it's in response to the honor flight that we have. You have coming up soon. For those of you who don't know, the honor flight is an organization that sends World War II veterans back to Washington, D.C. to the World War II Memorial, and puts on a big brouhaha to show appreciation for those who served in World War II. They visit the World War II Memorial, and they attend a breakfast and a lunch where those on the honor flight are honored. This year they are going to send a few of the Rosie the Riveters, which Grandma was one of them, on the honor flight. So that was a nice thing, a great honor for Grandma to be recognized. And so Cammie wanted to know, and it's kind of a real broad question, so maybe you can start talking, Grandma, and then we can just kind of feed questions off of what you tell us. She wants to know about your days as a Rosie the Riveter. So maybe you can tell us about what you did, what a typical work day was, where you went, how many hours you worked, what was significant about that, what was your feelings of your importance in the role, things like that. So,
First of all, Lynette's going with me, and because each person has to have someone with them. What do they call them, Leslie?
escorts?
Escort, yeah. And so she went to a meeting Saturday, and I will be the only woman on the board.
Oh, really?
So,
Because initially I know that they told you that they were hoping to gather some more, right?
yeah, and they were going to try to get some nurses too.
Okay.
But so far they haven't. So it's quite an honor to be able to be the only one that's not a veteran.
Yeah, huge honor.
So anyway, after I got out of high school, I went to Denver, and my friend and I were at a dance one night, and we had been talking about going to California. And at that dance, she said, my brother called, and he's in Denver, and he said if we wanted to come down there, we could stay with him for a couple nights and see what we could do. And then if we didn't like Denver, we could go on to California. So we decided to do that, and we left the very next day.
And how old were you? You said it was right out of high school?
Yeah, I was 19. I turned 19 in December. And so we left the next day, and we had young guys that used to come from Sturgis area, down east of Sturgis, and if they had been drinking a little bit, they didn't want to drive home, so they would come over to our house and stay overnight. And we had all those bedrooms upstairs to have plenty of room, and Mom would go upstairs and ask them, count noses to see how many she had to make breakfast for in the morning. And so anyway, 2 of them had stayed overnight, and one of them ended up marrying her sister. And the other one has been a good friend of ours. We used to play cards with he and his wife all the time. But they took me to town, to Sturgis, and we went to a movie, and then they put me on the bus. And I had $25 when I left home. I paid $11 for the bus ride to Denver, and I don't know how we'd have ever gone to California if we didn't like it there. But we got to Denver, and he met us and took us to his house. He and another guy were in the glider corps in World War II, and they were renting a house there together. So we stayed overnight, and then he took us into the employment agency the next day, and we had things, and this sounded like it was kind of interesting to me, so we both signed up for it. We were supposed to take 6 weeks training before we went out on the line, and so we signed up, and a couple weeks later Ruth decided she didn't want to do that, so she went and got a job in a restaurant for a while, and then they let her go a week or so later because she was only 18 and she couldn't serve liquor. So she decided to go home and get married. So I was left in Denver by myself.
How long was that after?
Just a week or two after we got there. And so I was checking in my tools that day after working, and somebody was asking me while we were in line, you know, are you from Denver? And I said, no, I just came. And she said, well, do you live with family? And I said, no, we have an apartment. And I said, I had a roommate, but she left today, and this gal about 5 people behind me wanted to know. She said, do you want a roommate? And I said, sure. So she came to live with me, and that's the first time I met her. So things are a little different then.
No Craigslist or anything.
But it was quite interesting working there. We had to check out tools, and they'd tell us what to check out that day, and we learned how to work on sheet metal and cut it, and also rivet, and we practiced riveting, and then we also worked on electrical work, putting in radios and things. And but we had I was one of the first women out there. There were only 2 of us on that in the big group when I first went out there, and this one man did not think women should be out there at all.
What was his name?
Ed Leary. He was an Irishman, but he didn't think women should be working there. And before 6 months was over, he had a crew of 8 women, all women on his crew, and he just loved us. But one day we went downtown to get some coveralls, and we all got bright green coveralls, and on the back we had Continental Airlines written, and then on the front we had Leary's Missing Links, because he was always looking for somebody, and he said, where's my missing link? So we had Leary's Missing Links on the front.
Kind of your team name.
And they were bright green for his Irish. And we came in one day, all of us in our green coveralls, and we stood with our backs to him so he could see the Continental Airlines, and we turned around, and he was really surprised to see his name on our coveralls. Anyway, the biggest job we had was the planes were built out in the West Coast and at Boeing, and they were planes just like the airline planes, except they didn't have the seats and things in them, so they were just the empty plane, and they were sent to Denver to be modified, and so we had to cut holes in the sides, in the top.
For turrets and things like that?
For gun turrets, and we had to put gun turrets in both sides, one in the top, one in the tail, and one in the front under the pilot. And so that was quite a big job, and we just enjoyed it so much. And the several different women came and started working. They were all about my age, and we got to be really, really good friends. So we were all in the same crew. And so we did things together. We would leave work and go have a picnic in the park or something, and we went to USO dances together, and we would take the car and go down to Colorado Springs for Easter because they had sunrise services at Red Rocks out there, and we would do that. One time we went down and it was raining so hard we couldn't go out to the Easter program. I guess they probably canceled it anyway. But we were in the YMCA or YWCA building, and there was a basketball court in there. We had heard basketball being played, so we went out and looked over the balcony, and here were a bunch of soldiers down there playing basketball. So we went and played with them, and then Evelyn always had her car, so we'd load that up and go someplace. But we used to work different shifts. We'd work 2 weeks on day shift, and then we'd work 2 weeks on swing shift, which was 3 to 11, and then we'd work from 11 to 7 in the morning on the graveyard shift. And we would get off work on the graveyard shift and go horseback riding, and then lots of times we went to we would get other people to go with us sometimes. And this one time we put our names in down at the USO and asked if some guys wanted to go with us on a hayride, and so there were about the same number of guys and gals, but they came and we went on a hayride, and everybody was having so much fun. But there was one, I don't know how he got there, because it was usually not officers, non-commissioned people. So this one lieutenant was with us, and he just thought he was big stuff, and he went from one gal to the other trying to make up with them. And when we stopped for breakfast, he said to Claude, the guy that had the horses, he said, "I don't understand. I've never seen a bunch of girls like this." And he said, "Well, I've known them for a long time, and they're a good bunch of girls. Don't you worry about it. Just stay away from them." So we had fun, and we went horseback riding with some of the guys. And one of the girls married one of the guys that started with us. And so then, what else can I tell you about?
Did you have any particular task, in the plant? Did you do one thing or several things, or?
Yeah, we did a lot of the riveting to put those gun turrets in, and like I said, we put some radio equipment in, and then we worked on B-29s, which were called the Flying Fortress. Mm-hmm. And then later on, I think it was about in April of 1945, we started working on B-29s. And these B-29s were built in Omaha, Nebraska. And they were built for a special reason, and that was to carry the atomic bomb.
So they weren't just normal planes, they were specifically built.
They were specific for that reason, or the ones that they sent to us were for that reason. There were about 10 of them that we worked on, and what we did was they were great big planes, and they had 2 great big bomb bays where they dropped the bombs. Mm-hmm. But where the back one was, we put great big tanks in so that they could carry all that extra fuel so they could go a long way, because they had to go a long way to get to Japan.
Right.
And so we put those gas tanks in there, and then I even worked on the engines, putting superchargers on the engines.
Wow.
I thought that was kind of strange for them to have us do that, but they showed us what to do and we did it. And but we didn't have gun turrets put in those at all. It was just mostly that and some extra equipment. So
What
They-
was? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
the ones that bombed Pearl Harbor, Enola Gay and
Enola Gay?
Enola Gay.
You mean
Pearl Harbor.
Nagasaki?
No,
and
the ones
Osaka.
that bombed Hiroshima,
Hiroshima, right?
and Nagasaki, where
Enola Gay.
Enola Gay, and the other one was Boxcar. Boxcar. It's Bocksa.
All
No,
right.
CAK. Backcscar. Boxcar.
So Bach,
Because
as in like the pilot's name was
The
Bach.
pilot's name was Bach. And so they bombed Pearl Harbor. I mean, they bombed, not Pearl Harbor, they bombed Hiroshima. And then 3 days later, they bombed Nagasaki. So then I think it was 15 days later that the first time Japan would not surrender.
Right.
But after the second bombing, they decided they'd better surrender. So it was 15 days after they bombed those places that the war was ended and they signed the papers. And shortly after that, we all got laid off because they didn't need us anymore.
Right.
So then I had to find something else to do.
Short part of history.
So the Rosie the Riveter filled a gap of employment that was left by the men leaving to war, and then when the war was over, the men were coming back, and there wasn't the need to build the planes
There
anymore.
weren't the need to modify those planes anymore. And
What was the factory that you worked at initially before it was a plane modification
it was at
plant?
Stapleton Airfield in Denver.
Okay, so it was part of the
It was
military
part of the
areas.
airport there.
Okay.
But they had built a great big building for us to work in,
What was your
And-
typical work day like? How many hours a day?
8 hours a day.
5, 6 days a week?
Yeah,
4
5 days a
5
week.
And what was the typical pay?
Well, when I started, I got 67 cents an hour.
Holy mackerel, you were loaded.
Yeah, I really thought I was. I thought I was making pretty good money.
What about when you ended?
I don't even remember what I was making when we ended, but more,
Yeah, more.
probably a couple of dollars an hour, I don't know.
So how long was it total you were working? Sorry.
I worked from June of 1943 until August of 1945. And
$2 an hour would have been really good, because I was only making $1.35 an hour when I was.
well, I don't know if it was $2. I don't remember what it was. That's what I said. But anyway,
What was,
I had something else I was going to say and I forgot.
other than monetary reasons for going and getting a job, were there any other feelings that you had as to why you wanted to do that? I know that obviously there's probably a huge sense of national pride, things like that, but did
Well,
that play into it?
I didn't go to Denver particularly to do that. We just went to Denver, but that's what we got started in. But I felt, after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, I felt like I'd had a big part in winning that war
Yeah.
because we modified those airplanes that carried the bombs. The first plane carried one that was called Little Boy,
Mhm.
and then the second one was a larger bomb, and it was called Big Boy. So,
Yeah. So in relation to just everything else, you hadn't met Grandpa yet? You hadn't met,
oh no,
and so
no,
this is
I
long
didn't
before
meet
that.
Grandpa until after
After the war ended.
after he came back from the service, and he got discharged in, I think, about the 1st of March in 1946. So he was,
So another few months later.
yeah.
Well, the Rosie the Riveter role was a huge change in American culture because prior to that, there weren't a lot of women who were working. and those that were, it was definitely considered a man's job what you were doing, that physical labor.
Yeah,
So
it
it
was.
changed a lot. You wore pants, I think was
Oh,
a
yeah, we
popular
always
thing.
wore pants, coveralls.
Yeah, so that was a big change, and there's a movement. While you were talking, I was just searching the internet, and there's a movement calling for the modern Rosie the Riveter in Denver, and they're
Oh,
trying.
really?
Yeah, they're trying to get more women into the workforce, and they're kind of recalling that Rosie the Riveter
Type of work.
character, you know, to
We can do it.
try to create a situation where we get more women in the
Oh,
workplace.
that's interesting.
So, but anyway, so it was a huge part of American history, and that gives us about close to 22 minutes.
Ask
Um,
her, ask about the.
Well, you
how
can.
she- Okay.
She can hear you.
How do you feel about going on this trip? What is your emotional feeling about taking this honor flight?
Well, I think it's going to be nice. I feel honored that they think that it's important to do that. Mark's friend suggested that I send in an application, and the next day he sent me an application, and he thought that they were ready to start taking somebody else because they were almost through with the veterans. There weren't too many
They're dying
veterans
off a
left.
lot faster these days. So
Yeah. So, anyway, I was happy when they called. The lady that called said that they hadn't really done anything like that, but she would put the application in, and she said they had thought about having trying to get some of the Army nurses, but so far they hadn't done that. But I was surprised when Lynette told me I was going to be the only woman on the trip and the only non-veteran. So it's quite an honor that way.
quite an honor. I actually submitted the suggestion to Sam Penrod of KSL as well, who's lives in my neighborhood, that they do a story on it. And he passed it along. Unfortunately, they've done a lot of honor flight stories, and they felt, I guess, because I never heard back again, that the honor flight in general
Yeah.
had been an exhausted story piece because they never heard back again.
They're gonna have, Lynette
so-
said KSO was going to be there.
Yeah, KSL's always there, but I don't know that they're not doing a story on it per se, is what I've heard, anyways. But it is an awesome thing, and
I didn't feel, I don't feel a whole lot of pride or anything for that, but I feel more anxious now than I did before I talked to Lynette, and she told me all the things that they were talking about and what we were going to do. We're going to have breakfast at the airport before we go, or before we get to the airport, I guess. And then we'll get to Washington, D.C. and go to the Hilton Hotel. We're going to be staying in the Hilton. And we'll have dinner that night. It'll just give us time to go get settled in the hotels. And we each have two beds in our rooms, so we have our companion with us. And so then the next morning, she told me all the things that we were going to do. We're going to go have breakfast first, and then we'll go to the World War II Memorial first, and then we'll go to the Vietnam Memorial, and they'll have a program there. And then we'll go, there are several different memorials after that. And so it's going to be interesting.
yeah, I'm excited. Hopefully
And
there's a
then we
video you
have
can-
dinner that evening and a program, and apparently Lynette asked if we could have somebody else with us, and they said if we have visitors there or relatives, they could join us, but they'd be responsible for their own lunch, where ours is all furnished. So that's going to be interesting.
And then you spend the night again that night and come home.
Come home the next morning.
So that's a lot of moving for just 2.5 days.
Yeah, it is. And everybody has to have a wheelchair. And so they said you don't have to stay in the wheelchair all the time, but if you want to use it for a walker, you can do that. But you have to have one available because so many of the people are getting
Yeah.
crippled now.
I'm sure it's based on experience. They've been doing it for a couple of years, and it's just a lot with the humidity, I think, and the heat and all the activity. It's a lot.
Well, I
so,
hope next month it won't be quite so hot.
Yeah.
She comes home on Grandpa's birthday, September 15th, so that's exciting.
Oh, and she said we had to wear, we'll each get a T-shirt, and we have to have the T-shirts on both days. And so then she said, I probably will be asked to wear an army hat. So I thought, if I have my choice, I can take a Coast Guard hat.
Yes.
Yeah.
For Grandpa, huh?
Well, very good. We're running out of time here. We hope your trip is fantastic. I'm sure everyone that watches the video hopes the same thing. And we'll follow up with when you get back. We'll talk about that experience as well.
Okay.
Although the primary purpose of this is to capture your past, I guess at that point it will be your past. It'll just be your most recent past. So, again, if you have questions, please send them to me via Facebook or on email at mark@howinsurance.org or text them to me at 801-358-6357. And thank you.
With the E on the end of how.
Yeah, like I spelled last time, I'll put it on the message. Thank you again, Grandma. Do you have anything you want to say before we hit stop?
What other questions did Cammie ask?
Oh, it's a whole other section.
Okay.
It's about you and Grandpa getting into the restaurant business.
Oh.
So, but and then we still have pages of other questions.